August 12th, Stearns County Board of Commissioners meeting to order, and I hope they fix that. We'll do the roll call. Randy?
Commissioner Notch.
Here.
Commissioner Persky.
Here.
Commissioner Bertram.
Here.
Commissioner Clark.
Here.
District 4 is vacant.
Thank you. Okay, please stand and do a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and freedom for all.
Okay, the agenda, there's one amendment, Mike?
Mr. Chair, yes, we just added a item under presentation and awards, which we can do once the agenda is approved.
Okay, so with that addition, any more discussion on the agenda, or else a motion would be in order?
So moved.
Commissioner Clark moves the
Second.
agenda. Commissioner Persky seconds it. Any more discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. So if we're going to do that,
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm happy to report to everybody, and we know this from being told last week, but the Minnesota Association of County Agriculture Inspectors honored our own Bob Dunning with a Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm told that that's not an award that's frequently done. And what I have here is what the association had to say about Bob. This award recognizes the tremendous dedication, support, and partnership that Bob has provided to the Minnesota Association of County Agricultural Inspectors and the Minnesota Department of Agriculture as an agricultural inspector for Stearns County. Throughout his career, Bob has represented both organizations on various committees and legislative projects. He was instrumental in the passage of the bill that funded the county agriculture inspector position for the first time, spending time in hearings at the Capitol and working with the Association of Minnesota Counties. At the local level, he successfully trained local weed inspectors and did countless road surveys to plan for noxious weed management throughout Stearns County. And they thanked Bob for all of his many contributions. And we thank Bob for all of your contributions to the county. We know that you're going to retire soon, and we'll have to honor you again when that happens. And so we want you to come forward and bring that award up here with you so we can see it and get a picture.
we'll,
Thank you.
I'd ask the entire board to join me in doing that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You really should have brought a weed with.
We can find one.
Can we get one? I never do it.
Hey, Bob, what's your favorite weed? Do you have one? It's legal now.
I'm not retired yet.
Oh.
His answer should have been none of them.
Oh.
Okay, the next item is the consent agenda. We have 13 items on the consent agenda. I'm going to ask for E3 to be pulled. Anybody else have anything that they want to pull from the consent agenda? If not, a motion would be in order to approve the 12 items on the consent agenda.
So moved, minus E3.
Okay? Is there a second? Terrell seconds it. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving consent agenda items 1, or the 12 consent agenda items, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. On E3, it's the cannabis one. The only concern I have is I don't think we discussed, and I know the planning commission kind of struggled a little bit with the 20-year or how long the IUP should be the interim use permit. So I think 20 years, this is a new activity. I think we should kind of not run down the hill. I think we should walk down the hill. So I would be more comfortable with a shorter term IUP to start with. This is the first one we're approving, to my knowledge. And cities have approved some, but certainly the cities are looking to us and a lot of other folks for our leadership. So that's my concern, I guess. And I've kind of mentioned it to some board members, so you can share your take on it. And if we changed the number of years, did you check, Mike, would we have to have a public hearing then?
You typically would. I think Angie's prepared to answer that question too.
Oh, okay. I shared this with Mike earlier so we could figure this out. But if we changed the 20 to a different number, would we have to set our own public hearing?
Yeah, I just didn't know the time frame yet, so
Got it.
that impacts it.
Good morning,
Angie.
Commissioners. Angie Berg, Environmental Services. It has been the board's policy, if you're going to do something different than what the Planning Commission did, which would include a condition of the 20 years to hold your own public hearing. And we do have time to do that. We would extend the 60 days and have a public hearing probably end of September, early October. I'd have to look at the calendar.
Okay, thank you. And I don't have a problem with the application. It's just the timeframe. Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, at that public hearing, because this was our first cannabis issue that we dealt with, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of questions. We did try to get a better handle on, what this thing would look like on a different number of areas. And the issue on the length of the permit was brought up. We talked with it in some detail. It's not just like a retail place where you open up a facility and if you decide to close it up, it's not a big deal. It's a considerable investment because of the electronics, because of the structure of the building, the ventilation and things like that. So we tried to come up with a number that we thought was appropriate, and the board came up with the idea that maybe 20 years was appropriate. The idea that it's, an IUP, it is going to be something that's going to have to be reviewed. And also, if there are violations, then those violations get documented and the IUP could get pulled. So that's where the Planning Commission was with it.
And it wasn't unanimous. And also, I don't know, I'm sure we have pulled a IUP or a CUP, but my confidence in that, and again, this is a new activity. We're going to have at least 13 of them in the county at some point. Again, I'd rather walk down the hill, but Commissioner Notch?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm not too overly concerned because I think this is a very expensive endeavor, and I'm not sure, we don't know if this will continue into the future, but there's a significant investment. One of the issues I have is if there was a reason the chair abstained or what.
Mr. Chair, yeah, and
Commissioner Persky?
yeah, that's been an issue, a concern that I have had, and that is that the chair has been abstaining for a number of issues there. And personally, I approached him about that, saying that his vote, his opinion should be validated, and he should not be abstaining unless he's got a conflict. But on this issue, he just went ahead and abstained. We did not give necessarily a reason.
And Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
my
Clark.
understanding, it looked like it hasn't mattered who's actually sitting in that seat. They've all started doing that unless it's a split vote. And while that is something some kinds of boards do, that's not anything any of our committees or our board does. So I'd certainly like to encourage them to be voting. But there was only one against. I kind of, like both the Commissioner Persky and Notch have said, I've got concerns about the investment up front if we didn't allow this to be for the type of period that the Planning Commission has recommended. And I do think there's safeguards in there. I also recognize that the Planning Commission could have gone to a longer period, like 25, 30 or more, and I would have been probably one of the people to say maybe it needs to be a little bit shorter, but I'm comfortable with what they're recommending.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and then
Commissioner Persky?
I also just, the dissenting vote, we had discussion about the dissenting vote as well, and that was that the new policy with cannabis, not all of us were agreeable to that. And so while the statute permits it, some of us still have the idea that, you know, the wish was something we could have done to have stopped it. And personally, I was not necessarily in favor of it either, but it is the law, and we're going to have to deal with those folks that want to move forward with it, so.
Okay. Well, my sense is that, I guess somebody's got to make a motion to approve it then.
I'll make a motion to approve the Planning Commission recommendation.
Okay, Commissioner Clark moves to approve the E3 item.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Notch seconds it. Any further discussion?
And, Mr. Chair, I
Commissioner
would say
Clark?
that I certainly share Commissioner Persky's concerns. The question is about that, though, and I think the safeguards are in here, and I just want to acknowledge, I think that the issue you raised is also an understandable one.
The motion's been made, seconded. No
One
further-
more comment.
Oh, Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, and I do think it's appropriate that we do have it as an IUP, so that it will be reviewed, and that a time does run out on that. It also gives us a chance to take a look at procedurally what's going on and what safeguards might be there. If the state makes any updates, then we also be able to change to go with those updates. I believe the city of St. Joseph is actually going to make it a CUP, which would mean that it would not get reviewed. So I think we're ahead of the game by maybe doing the IUP. So you can call the question.
And if the state gets more involved, that makes me even more nervous because they don't know what the hell's going on. We're the ones that got the control on this. So anyway, motion's made, seconded. In the discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Aye. Randy, you want to do the roll call?
Sure. Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Persky,
Aye.
Commissioner Notch,
Aye.
Commissioner Bertram.
Nay.
It carries 3-1.
Okay. Then we'll go to Public Works. Jody? She wore my favorite color this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My item for you, F1, is on page 288 of your agenda packet. Today, I'm asking the board to adopt a resolution to advance county state aid highway construction funding to help cover this year's construction projects. In the past several years, we have advanced from our state aid construction account. The resolution on page 289 states up to $6,971,151.42. Historically, the amount that we actually advance is significantly less than what is in the resolution, but the resolution counts for that full amount. As an example, I believe last year the resolution was to advance over $7 million, and actually it was just over $4.76 million that we advanced. This is basically an interest-free loan from the state to help us cover our construction costs. So I'm asking the board to adopt the resolution on page 289 of your packets.
Okay. Any questions?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Notch moves to adopt resolution to advance state aid construction funding.
Second.
Commissioner Clark seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
We have Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's 4 items under the administration today, and the first is a legislative recap from MICA, and we have Mr. Justin, Nathan, here to make that presentation, and I'll let you introduce anybody that you have with you. Nathan, thanks for being here.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm going to have some of my team join me up here as well. We're just going to kind of walk through the slides, and they'll introduce themselves as they go, if that works. So first, just kind of wanted to do a brief intro of who MICA is. MICA is an organization of 17 counties throughout the state, essentially the largest counties that aren't Hennepin or Ramsey. We work on statewide issues that affect counties. Me and my colleagues will be running through what some of those statewide issues are that were at the legislature this year. I also started as the executive director back in January of this year. Prior to that, I worked at the League of Minnesota Cities, so please don't hold that against me. Yeah, it's our job to establish connections at the county level, provide updates to you as they come in, and also try and make sure we connect you all or the stories from your county to the capital, because that's really when we're at our most effective, is when we're making sure those county stories are really becoming as individualized and personalized as possible. Before I kind of get into the 2025 session, I did want to provide some information about kind of like what the property tax picture looks like in Stearns County specifically. So here you can see kind of where Stearns was at in 2020 as far as where it was getting its property tax revenue from, and how it compares to Minnesota. So the red bar is Minnesota in 2025, the blue bar is Stearns in 2025. The thing I would note here is that Stearns really, as you all know, has some of everything. And the trend from 2020 to 2025 shows kind of a dip for Stearns and commercial industrial and increase in residential property value. I would say that's really a statewide trend, not just a Stearns trend. And so that dip and corresponding increase in residential home values kind of what we saw statewide across Minnesota in that time frame. So moving on to the 2025 session, the context that's really important here is that there was a $5 billion structural dollar deficit in the out biennium at the legislature. So cuts were being considered across the board. While there was a temporary surplus, that really didn't generate much attention the way that it might normally. So the tax area was no exception. And when you're talking about cuts and the target for taxes, you're talking about two things. It's either tax increases or cuts in spending. And spending in the tax area is all aids to local governments, be they counties, cities, or other. So there was a significant cut target, $118 million this biennium, $190 the out biennium. One of the things that we were not able to protect was the dedication of the local government cannabis aid. So when the legislature legalized cannabis in 2023, they said we're going to give 10% of the gross receipts tax to counties, 10% to cities. This year, that was wiped away. Essentially, no money had come in yet because it was based on sales. I think counties got a really nominal sum of about $2,000 each last September. So that was not something we were able to keep. I just think it was difficult to make the argument that it was a property tax shift when the money wasn't coming in yet, essentially. So that was kind of the difficulty we faced in protecting that one. The other cut was a 50% cut in aquatic invasive species aid starting in 2027. So it's not going to affect your budget next year, but it will the year after that. Stearns is one of the larger recipients of aquatic invasive species from just a dollar perspective. On a per capita, it's not as large just because the way that aid is designed, it tends to benefit smaller counties more on a per capita basis. There had been a $20 million annual cut proposed to county program aid and a 33% cut proposed to payment in lieu of taxes, but we were able to protect both of those and there weren't any changes to either of those aid programs. So I've also got the aid amounts for CPA for Stearns up here. 12.7 million in 2026 after a little bit of rounding. What I would say is that Stearns does receive an above average amount on a per capita basis for CPA, about $78 per capita compared to the $58 statewide average. So with that, I would turn it over to my colleague, Amber. Once I figure out how to do that.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Amber Backus. This is my first year representing MICA at the legislature on transportation issues. And while I've done a lot of transportation in the past, I wasn't totally up to speed on what you care about. So I really appreciate the resources of people like Jody Tyke who could bring me up to speed and help educate me for this session. Transportation was one of those sticky issues this year. We were hoping to be able to get more resources into programs that counties care about, but we ended up doing a lot of trying to protect what we already had and what was passed in 2023 with a major transportation package. The Transportation Committee had a very tough target to meet. It was a negative target of $115 million, and that's about a third of their general fund money. Since most transportation funds are dedicated from fuel taxes and tab fees and sales tax, there wasn't a lot of general fund to cut from. So the bulk of that, the cuts were to Metro Transit and active transportation. But then, of course, the legislature wanted to keep some of the money that was going to be transferred over from the sales tax on motor vehicles that was to be dedicated to the trunk highway fund that passed in 2023. The legislature decided to slow that down to keep some of those general fund dollars on the bottom line for them to deal with their own budget issues. So that meant that there was a loss to the trunk highway fund this session, but it's not as big as it could have been. While the transfer of the sales tax on motor vehicle parts was slowed down, the legislature did increase the fees on electric vehicles. So hopefully the net loss to the trunk highway fund over the next 4 years will only be $18.3 million. For the county state aid roads, that is going to be an $8.6 million loss in the out biennium. Hopefully these targets will still be met. There's a little bit of concern about changes in public policy with regard to electric vehicles, that maybe there's not going to be that much revenue coming from EV surcharge increases, but we will see there. Fortunately, there was a bright spot in getting some new money for transportation purposes. The transportation bill did give $3 million in cash for the local government road wetland replacement program. This is a program that maintains a credit bank for when you are doing a road project, a reconstruction project, not new building, but you're touching wetlands. This provides the credits for you to help replace those wetlands without having to pay for them yourself. And this was, I think, a first to have the Transportation Committee fund that through Bowser. So that was one bright spot in terms of some of the bad news we were facing on transportation. Things that did not go into effect this year. The first one was something we wanted to see as MICA, and that was slowing down the implementation of a new program where on state trunk highways, if you're building new capacity or new interchanges, that you would have to first calculate the greenhouse gas and vehicle miles traveled and then offset them. While I think the intent around this is great, there's still a lot of outstanding questions about how this will work and be implemented. So we were hoping for a 1-year delay at least to slow that down and make sure we get it right, but we were not successful in doing so. The other provisions that were dropped from the bill were things we were glad to see dropped from the bill, frankly. The Senate was interested in undoing the process for how state aid design standards are determined. There was a lot of concern that the legislature would be more involved, taking some of the authority away from counties and making those determinations. The Senate Transportation Bill also had a provision to expand how trunk highway funds can be spent. Right now it's limited to roads and bridges, and they were looking at expanding it to transit and active transportation. And when there's so many needs around the state for just roads and bridges, nobody wanted to see those funds diverted for other purposes right now. The legislature also was attempting to set speed limits in some counties. That did not go through, and the MICA and the engineers were glad to see that, so that there's still authority at the local level to do that. And then lastly, the Senate bill also had a provision to create a new business mitigation fund. If you have a business that's and your activities are disrupted by a highway construction project, there would be money to help offset your losses. Again, that's a very noble cause, but there were concerns that the funding for this would come from transportation projects. Initially, if you had a county road project, 1% would go into this fund. So again, taking money from your roads to fund something else. I did want to mention, it wasn't on the slide, and I'm sorry I skipped over it. One thing that did happen that I think is also a benefit to you is that the legislature enacted reimbursement for no-fee transactions at your licensing centers. So if a customer comes in, wants a change of address for their vehicle registration, and that's not tied to the tab renewal or something like that, there is reimbursement available now as for other services, such as those connected with license renewals and vehicle registrations for disabled American veterans. Since those are exempt from fees, you at least will get reimbursement for doing some of that work yourself. And I will say I was able to pop in your tab center this morning, get my own tabs renewed. It was very efficient, so thank you for that. Next slide, please. And then with regard to bonding, this wasn't a normal bonding session. We weren't sure if there was going to be a bonding bill, just because you need 3/5 of the legislature to pass one, and the Republicans and Democrats were necessarily getting along, so we didn't know if they would come together around a capital improvement package. But the day the special session was announced, we learned that they were going to do a bonding bill, which was great for us because there were several of our top priorities that were included in that for transportation. So $42 million for the local road improvement program, $20 million for local bridges. and then another $5 million in bonding for that local government road wetland replacement program. And these numbers exceeded our expectations because the governor originally had no money in his recommendations for these programs, and the Senate and House were initially proposing much less. But the reason Republicans in the Senate voted for the bill is they wanted more for infrastructure like roads and some wastewater and things like that. So there was a higher target for transportation, and we did pretty well on that front. And I will turn it over to Rachel to talk a little bit more about the environment provisions in the bonding bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Persky?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I got a question about the greenhouse gas emissions. A good number of us transportation folks and organizations were challenging that. And one of the things was maybe reducing what I want to say, the paperwork, the documentation, perhaps the hearings, as far as gathering that. So for example, putting in a roundabout, we know that will move traffic in that. You know, those greenhouse gases would be less than if we had a stop on the side roads. Do you know if the requirements like for that was reduced, or in that can we use some boilerplate language opposed to having to gather the data specifically for that intersection and, you know, finding the minutia within, you know, that particular project? You know if that was dealt with?
No, they haven't really addressed any of those issues yet and figured out exactly templates for how to do any of this. So that's part of the thing. We wanted to see a delay just to get this figured out.
Absolutely.
Because
But
it's
we
going to
didn't
take
get to
longer.
delay
It's
it,
going to add
correct?
to the processing, yeah, unfortunately.
We'll see what we can do.
Yes, we'll keep at it.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Sosnochik. I'm MICA's environmental liaison. Thank you so much for having us today. Just really quick, a couple things we want to highlight that were also included in the bonding bill. There are two pots of funds that counties will be eligible to receive. The first is $6 million in capital assistance program funding, or CAP funding. That's for solid waste management projects. Still no word from the MPCA on exactly how that funding will be made available, but we'll be sure to keep you updated when we learn more. The other pool of funds is a new program. It's a statewide drinking water contamination mitigation program that will also be administered by the MPCA. And again, still some details to be worked out there, but good to see that funding included. And then just lastly, we'll note that, there was a significant amount of money, $176 million for local governments, for municipalities, for various water projects. And so even though not directly supporting counties, still helpful for our local government partners to have access to those resources. Keep it at that.
Good morning, everyone. Nancy Selesky, and I do public health and human services for MICA, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Going into the session, all three associations, MICA, AMC, and MACSA, had the top priorities related to health and human services, and I'm happy to tell you that we made progress in all three. The first one has to do with SSIS, systems modernization. The legislature did put $35 million into that program, and there was an additional $10 million that had been set aside from last year. So with that $45 million, now we will be able to draw down federal funds, and hopefully this green screen technology that you've all been wrestling with for years and years can finally move on. The second one was we had a Min Choices reform bill, and that was something where there's several components, but the main one was for those folks whose situation does not change from year to year. They're in the same physical state from year to year. We don't have to do those reassessments every year. It was changed to every 3 years. The client can request at any time to have a full reassessment done, but it's not necessary if their situation has not changed. We're also allowed to do more remote assessments. They increased it from 2 to 4 consecutive reassessments, if followed by then followed by an in-person reassessment. Verbal attestation now is the only requirement for service initiation. However, within 30 days after the assessment has been completed, then the written attestation does have to be collected from the client. There were some changes related to the assessor qualifications. The person only has to have a 2-year degree now to be able to complete those. Counties do need to begin these assessments, including an estimated timeline for how long the assessment's going to take within 20 working days of the client's request. And finally, DHS is going to be creating a dashboard on assessment completions that will be on their website. The third item has to do with priority admissions, direct care and treatment. Commissioner Clark very much involved in that over the years, and we've had a lot of other MICA representation in that area as well. There was a priority admissions panel that was put together a few years ago. Again, Commissioner Clark sits on that, and they came up with a number of recommendations related to the 48-hour rule, where you have to move a person out of a jail cell within 48 hours. Made progress this year in that pause for the moving the person from the jail or moving those folks up is paused for 2 years. That was a recommendation that came from the review panel. However, it was conditioned on the legislature also addressing the capacity issue that we have both within the state system as well as in our local communities. So they did pause that, but in addition to that, the Human Services Bill did include $20 million for the expansion, along with operating money in 2029 there. And then the bonding bill that, again, did pass that last day of session contained $55 million for that. So that total of $75 million will be enough to address the 50-bed facility or expansion at Anoka. The Priority Admissions Review Panel is extended with a report due on February 1st of 2026. There was an addition was included that people that are being boarded in hospitals can move up to 10 people per year to those, they're kind of moved up in terms of the priority, 10 people that are in those hospital situations. What did not happen is something that we have been working on for a long time. For the last 2 years, we had a reprieve related to folks that have been committed as mentally ill and dangerous, but are awaiting a bed in one state-operated facility, awaiting a bed in another. County saved kind of very significant dollars over the last 2 years, and unfortunately that was not extended this year. So starting in 26-27, we will be picking up about $14 million in the first biennium, and then $18 million in the second. And then the need for community resources still needs to be addressed. So more to come on that, but certainly good progress made. The next slide is the cost share, very colorful cost share slide. You can see the categories, the House, Senate, Governor, and then the gold is what the conference committee agreed to at the end. Looking at the totals on the bottom, you can see that we made very dramatic progress in terms of tempering those cost shifts. Thank you to all the county commissioners, county staff that showed up at the legislature and really fought these shifts, because we were totally on defense on this for a long time. A couple of things that I would mention that we are picking up. That item in the middle related to disability waivers, there was a proposal at one time that counties would pick up a residential county cost share on that. That did not happen, but if you look at that number, it's a target of a negative number of $89 million in this work group that's going to be appointed that is charged with finding savings within the Health and Human Services. MICA has 2 appointments, AMC has 2, as well as MACSA. And again, they're looking at $90 million in savings is what they're banking on here. There was no cost share increase related to the sex offender program. I want to mention that. There had been a proposal that counties pick up withdrawal management services. That did not happen either. So again, they were tempered from where we started. I would also just point toward the bottom there related to min choices. There is $18 million in savings booked for what they're hoping. The Department of Human Services has come up with a methodology for reimbursement for a flat fee reimbursement. Currently, we are reimbursed under the random time moment study process, and so they're thinking that they'll find $18 million in savings by shifting to that flat fee reimbursement. Next item I would mention is the Health and Human Services Bill. We talked about SSIS at $35 million. There's been problems throughout the state, but particularly in rural Minnesota related to EMS ambulance services. They did put $16 million into an ambulance operating deficit grant program, $2 million into ambulance service training and staffing grants, and then fairly significant money into the rural EMS uncompensated care pool, both from the general fund and healthcare access fund. In terms of public health, they did put money, $2.6 million into infectious disease prevention. And then I would mention that they put $5 million per biennium. They increased the local and tribal public health grants for cannabis-related prevention. Last year, they cut that program by $7.2 million for the biennium, so this partially restores that at $5 million. In terms of MDH savings, they did reduce funding for emergency preparedness grants and funding for the public health infrastructure pilot projects. And there was also a myriad of MDH fee increases that they did pass. Other captured savings in that bill, the state is taking over the administration of non-emergency medical transportation. This is something that was gifted to counties in the middle of the night probably 12 years ago, and we had to set up our own system. The state is now taking that back, and they're booking savings of $48 million for the biennium and $104 in the second. And then there were a number of grants, unexpended grant balances that were also canceled. Finally, they returned $21 million to the Health Care Access Fund for the public option that did not happen, and $56 million in the first biennium, $91 in the second, for the elimination of Minnesota Care for undocumented adults. What didn't happen, there were no changes to the Minnesota African American Family Preservation Act. There is a statewide work group that is working through this right now. The MICA members are Otter Tail County Commissioner Kurt Mortensen and Washington County Commissioner Carla Bigham, along with Angela Conley from Hennepin County and Joan Lee from Polk. There's again, it's a statewide working group. They're kind of, going through the process right now. They're supposed to have an interim report of their findings by January 1st of 2026. We did go to we did ask certain legislators this year about allowing us to phase in, because this does go into effect on January 1st of 2027. Currently, Hennepin and Ramsey are underway, or there's a pilot project underway for them, and we asked for some additional time for the other 85 counties. We were told no appetite for that right now. Let's see what happens with the statewide working group. So we have a year to change this. If we need to, we'll be back in January, and we'll look at that again. There also, during a session, there was language that popped up through an amendment that would have prevented counties from contracting for case management services. That did not happen, but I do expect to see that come forward again. And finally, the Senate Judiciary Committee Chair did have a provision in their bill that would have established a civil commitment coordinating division within the Office of the Attorney General. This was would largely overlap work that's already being done in other areas, so that language eventually was dropped. And then I would just mention that they were entertaining increasing the provider tax up to 2%. It's currently at 1.8%. That did not happen either. Finally, I just want to call out your staff, Melissa Huberty, Julie Ellis, Janet Galigowski. They are all very vital, important parts of MICA staff meetings, and not only for just MICA, but for counties throughout the state. And I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
And with that,
All right, back to some environment stuff. So first, just wanted to do kind of a high-level overview on what progress was made and just how things kind of played out over 2025. I think at a high level, a lot of the committees, our environment agenda is fairly wide-ranging, and those discussions play out across several different committees at the legislature. And most of those committees had, zero targets, or they had to cut a significant amount of funding. And, with environment, a lot of my time is spent talking about solid waste, and what we really need there is money to support county solid waste management efforts. And there just was not a lot of money to go around. And so I think, even though there were a lot of really good conversations with legislators and a lot of good, discussion and debate in committee, relevant to our priorities, at the end of the day, there's not, the money wasn't there. And so not a ton of progress on our priorities. The legacy bill, and particularly the Clean Water Fund, over $300 million in clean water funds were allocated over the next biennium. And that was pretty much, those were exactly the recommendations from the Clean Water Council. MICA has 2 board members that serve on the Clean Water Council, and so our member counties are, I think, fairly well represented. And so I'm glad to see that funding successfully get done. And then I mentioned the bonding funds as well. So those are kind of the exception where we did see significant resources, but generally that was not the case in the other committees. Nathan already talked about the decrease in AIS county aid, so I won't talk more about that. I mentioned solid waste, and a lot of our time this session was focused on both protecting the Packaging Waste and Cost Reduction Act that passed last year, which is establishing a product stewardship program for packaging and paper products in Minnesota. And then we also help support efforts around advancing similar legislation around electronic waste and batteries. And I think there, when we're in a time where there is not a lot of money available to help counties in their important work to manage waste responsibly, product stewardship is an opportunity to try and bring some of those county costs down, bring the producers of those products a little bit more into the fold and share some of that cost. And so I think that will continue to be an important angle for us. And we were successful in preventing any major changes. There were a lot of opportunity or a lot of moments where we thought that there might be amendments offered and legislation offered and heard in committee that would have significantly changed the Packaging Act in particular. And we were able to avoid that in part a lot, through MICA County Commissioner participation and outreach to some key legislators. And so appreciate that. The e-waste and battery bill did not ultimately advance. I think there's an interest among legislators who, supported the packaging bill, but want to see that implemented a little bit more and kind of see some progress there before we start expanding that type of model to other products. So, we'll continue to have that conversation, but I think it'll take a little bit for something like that to get across the finish line. Data centers ended up being a pretty significant point of contention. There ended up being a standalone data centers bill that passed at the, on the final day of session, on the one-day special session. Because this was such a focus for legislators, MICA does not have an official position on data centers. We, updated, the county administrators and our board on this issue because it just took up so much energy at the Capitol. And there were a lot of concerns, specific to water usage. And so I'll talk a little bit more about kind of what ended up happening there. But that did take a lot of time and energy from other discussions in kind of the environment space. And then lastly, again, a lot of conversation around wood waste and emerald ash borer, but when they needed to, allocate the funds, the money wasn't there, and so not a lot really changed in terms of that. So again, just an overview of some of the different bills that all had things in it that touched on our environment agenda. I talked about the legacy bill and the clean water funds. Just a couple other things in the environment bill. There were some fee increases around the watercraft surcharge and water permits and fees to help with AIS management and groundwater protection efforts. That's money that goes to the state though, so not a direct benefit to counties. There was also an increase in CLIF spending so the closed landfill investment fund. Previously, the state was only able to access $4.5 million a year. They increased that to $6.5 million, so just a little bit of additional help there. The tax bill, so another priority, and this is a longstanding conversation that counties have really led at the Capitol, is around SCORE and trying to get the full amount of the solid waste management tax that's collected by the state to go to county SCORE activities. Right now, 27% of that, which is about $33 million a year, just gets put in the general fund, and counties, we don't know where that gets spent. And so that conversation plays out in the tax committee. Nathan already talked about the dynamics there and the significant cuts that they had to make. So there's not an extra $33 million just lying around. But that's a place where we have, broad bipartisan legislator support. Our House SCORE bill had 35 authors on it, pretty much every member of the House Environment and Tax Committee. We had really great hearings in both the House and Senate, but if the money's not there, there's only so much that they can really do. But we'll continue bringing that legislation forward. I feel very confident in future years and trying to just chip away and get all of that money to counties where we would argue it belongs. And then the data centers bill, so, you know, I don't need to go into the specifics, they're outlined here, but there were some considerations around water usage kind of built into the permit process for these large water usage projects. And so that's, you know, just something that will need to be considered as those types of projects move forward. Thank you.
All right. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Chair, members of the board. My name is Emilio Lamba. I am the liaison for our Public Safety and Corrections and help tracking for MICA. I just wanted to start out looking at our corrections and public safety space this year. We were one of the areas that did receive a substantial positive target. The caveat on that is that the majority of that funding was pre-set aside for the Department of Corrections as well as the Department of Public Safety, specifically for operating adjustments and operating deficiency requests in order for them to continue with standard operations day to day. Part of that, too, did include the closure of the Stillwater Prison, which many folks, I'm sure, are aware of. That was able to allow them to receive some savings in the out years, as the original proposal from both the state, from the Senate as well as the House, was for them to only receive about 1/3 of the funding they requested. So the closure of that prison did help alleviate some of that on their front. Now, the remaining funding that was left in the committee was put forth for law enforcement training programs, the Minnesota Victims of Crime account. So there was very little money left in this space. It was really, the public safety and judiciary space was a bit unconsequential for counties, as we weren't set up with a bunch of proposed cost shifts. So there was a lot of policy changes that did happen. One that we pushed very hardly for through a variety of county associations was the 3-year averaging in our community supervision funding formula. This was critical, as it was going to allow our counties a little bit more predictability and stability within their budgeting, as well as allowing us to utilize previous years, as we do anticipate the trend for our probation numbers to decrease in years coming. I know from 2022 to 2023, if we were just going on a year-to-year basis, we saw about a $6 million decrease statewide for funding. So in order for that decline to be a little bit slower and smoother for our counties, a 3-year averaging was implemented. For counties that are still assessing supervision fees, that was pushed out now, the sunset of those fees to 2029, previously 2027. Counties that have already done away with sunsetting their fees are unable to bring them back. And same caveats as before, you're unable to increase them, but now you can continue to assess them till 2029. Additionally, one cost expansion that the state proposed was the Interstate Compact Unit funding. This unit helps with the transfers as well as monitoring of individuals that transfer between states that are on supervision. It's a state function. However, the state had proposed that since all 87 counties utilize it, that it would be prorated through their subsidies. Previously, it was only funded based off the subsidies of DOC contract counties. So the small portion of maybe 30 or some counties across the state were paying for that unit. The state proposed that a more equitable solution for that to be prorated across all 87. I think most counties and most county associations would maintain that the unit is a state function fully operated by the state, that counties have no supervision or authority over that unit, and so many state associations have already engaged with them on next steps and how we can better fund that rather than out of our county's pockets. One of the cost eliminations that did happen in this space was the state did claw back their 25% share of the sentencing to serve funding. Previously, it was at a 50-50 split. About a decade ago, switched to 75 county, 25 state, and now the state has removed their final 25%. I know for a lot of counties this was a very critical program, one that they really appreciated within their communities. So counties are still allowed to continue this program if they are willing to pick up that additional 25%, although some counties might have to have that difficult choice as to whether or not to continue that. And then lastly, there were changes around the Minnesota Rehabilitation Reinvestment Act, specifically just solidifying and allowing the commissioner to be able to revoke or not apply earned incentivized release credits. Previously, an individual was able to earn those earned incentivized release credits without any method or function for that to be removed, given their behavior in the facility as well as other public safety factors. Changes to the statute now allow the commissioner to consider those.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Persky.
Say, the closure of the Stillwater Prison, you know, I wasn't familiar with that actually taking place.
Yep.
The number of cells, number of beds we have there, Are those being replaced in other areas? Do you know how that's going to be compensated for?
Yes, so I had engaged with the Department of Corrections, their Assistant Commissioner, Kelly Mitchell, as she is helping lead the closure of that prison. Currently, because our initial concern was, is this going to have an impact on our county probation? Are you going to be pushing more folks out onto supervision to help offset those numbers? What they've shared with us is that they do anticipate they have enough capacity in their current prisons that there will not be any increases on folks on supervision. Although there is a staffing impact, they'll likely still have to lay off a substantial amount of staff, but as far as the incarcerated persons within the prison, they should be able to disperse into their other facilities.
Just a few more things here. We'd had pursued some broader changes to earn sick and safe time to make sure counties who have more generous leave policies, those are accounted for in the statewide program. That did pass the Senate, but it didn't make it out of the House. There were a couple really minor changes like notice requirement. So previously, employees only needed to provide notice to their employers if they were going to use more than 3 days consecutively. That's bumped down to 2. On paid leave, we've been pursuing some broader changes as well, and we didn't really end up with that much at the end of the day. The House in particular was really defensive of the program that was passed in 2023. I think that our changes weren't viewed as very controversial, but they just really wanted the program to be implemented without many changes at all. The only thing that happened was reducing the premium cap rate from 1.2% to 1.1%. But practically speaking, that's not going to impact your budget because the current rate is 0.88%. It is variable, so theoretically it could get impacted if it moves up to 1.1 at some point. But right now, there's not an impact to your bottom line. I'll just touch on a couple of these other things really briefly. The 5 p.m. absentee ballot drop-off deadline in 2023, the legislature made it so for the final day on election day that you could drop off your absentee ballot, they bumped it from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. There were, especially in the 2024 election, a number of counties that ran into some issues with that. This year, the House had proposed moving it back to 5 p.m. The Senate proposed moving it back to 3 p.m., and it moved back to 5 p.m. Of course, after 5 p.m., people can still vote in person. There were some changes to the pensions bill and the pensions bill. So the duty disability or PTSD provision was changed so that those that claim it moving forward, this is only prospective, are limited to 5 years of insurance rather than guaranteed through age 65. This was done to make sure that the health of the pension fund remains relatively strong. It's currently the weakest amongst all the pension funds. So it should at least make sure it's stable, even though it's not increasing. In health, there is a probation officers and 911 telecommunicators working group. They're looking for their own separate pension benefit. That group's met a couple of times. There hasn't been a lot of progress. The probation officers have been pursuing their increased benefit through higher employee contributions. 911 telecommunicators have been talking about higher employer contributions. So we'll keep you posted on that as it develops. And then there are just some broader increases that were paid through general fund dollars to police and fire pensions as well as teachers. So where does that leave us? Fiscal year 2025 revenue up significantly above forecast, but still below spending. So doing better than what the state thought we'd be doing in February, but still, as you can see, if you look at kind of the top 2 lines there, the state's still bringing in less revenue than it is spending dollars. Obviously, that creates a structural deficit problem. The state did end this biennium with a $1.9 billion surplus at the end of the day after all the cuts were made and other changes. So that's a relatively high amount of money to move forward. But the U.S. economy is showing lower growth and higher inflation compared to the February forecast, what the economists had assumed back in February. So if you were to take that $1.9 billion surplus and roll it all over to address the deficit in 28-29, you've still got a pretty small $300 million deficit. But of course, the state does have a really healthy budget reserve of $3.2 billion. Just a couple other things to note. The passage of the OBBBA Act in July is causing significant uncertainty with both state and county budgets. We're still measuring and trying to assess what that will mean exactly. There's some special elections taking place. So technically, both the composition or majorities of either chamber could change, but I think that most assume the incumbent parties will win, though they're at least heavily favored. The legislature returns on February 17th, and the governor's indicated that any special session before then is unlikely. Did just want to really briefly touch on our policy process. Tomorrow, our board is meeting. Our board is made up of 2 county commissioners from each county, and we have Commissioner Clark serving as president. And they're going to tell us kind of what their top priorities are for the 2026 session, and then our policy committees are going to take those ideas and try to draft them up and draft our final policy platform, which is kind of like our guidepost for the year for what our top priorities are. And so then that's it, and just have our contact information here. Also happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you. Any additional questions than what we've asked during the presentation? Commissioner Clark?
Actually, I want to thank all of you for making time. The fact all of you are here and are trying to get to every board is a big deal, and each of your work is amazing, and the work you do with our staff is also, you know, it's very much appreciated, and the reason why we can be nimble and do things is because of that inner working. So looking out at some key staff, knowing how much they work together is, especially from a data standpoint. And Nathan, as you've come in, you've really helped us elevate some of the data questions that people have been having. So that's been helpful too.
Okay. This is the best board report that you've given, correct?
Oh, it's Stearns. We have to bring our A game. So I mean, this is the A+
I
presentation.
wanted to help you make
got.
sure to say that, because, you know, that is, and thank you for.
So we can say that
what do you get
tomorrow.
on tabs? $1. Thank you for the $1 you're leaving the insurance company. And I have to say this, Nancy and I met in 1986, and we were talking about it before the meeting, and it made both of us feel old. So I don't know how she continues to look as good as she does after I went to hell, but that's okay. So welcome, and thank you for being here, and thank you for working on our behalf.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Next item, Mike, on the remote off-site meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been suggested, and I've mentioned it a couple times, about holding a board meeting off-site, in other words, somewhere else in the county. Obviously, it's not my decision to change the venue of a board meeting. Of course, I'll be happy to facilitate that if that's the direction we go, but there may be some parameters or different structure or directives that the board would want if we do that, so I put it on the agenda, first of all, to get consensus or action to actually do that, and then if there is some ideas about different parameters or structure about how we would do that, I'm certainly want to be able to facilitate that in the end.
Okay, any thoughts? Commissioner Notch?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I would just basically at this point state, you know, if we want to kind of keep it on the back burner. One of the bigger fears probably is that people think it's always here, and then if we do move it, all of a sudden, now they come here, but we're not here. And as far as, you know, will we gain a lot more? I mean, it's outreach. You know, it'd be interesting maybe to survey, maybe Jeff, you and I survey people in our districts to see, well, would you even attend if we did it? You know, that would, because obviously it'll add an expense to the county if we have to figure out a lot of this remote stuff, I'm guessing.
Okay, Commissioner Clark?
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this several different times. One of the things I'm really proud of with our county is the amount of engagement we do, and as board, between the municipal league, going to the township supervisor, officers meetings, all the different things we all did going out to for the Justice Center, thinking back to the comp plan, the parks. So we get out, we do get out a lot. And I guess I have a few concerns, and then an idea that I at least have brought up before is, one is we have, for a regular meeting, we have a regular place and time. People can, unlike the way it was a long time ago, we've got all of these ways that people can stream and participate and get to us. That didn't used to be the case. And like even legislatively, when they used to go around the state, there wasn't any other way for people to actually see, and now you can stream everything. Heck, you can even testify. remotely, which I know I personally have found to be helpful, and the legislature as a whole never went anywhere. So I've got some questions about that, and I'm concerned a little bit if we just moved a whole meeting, how it means for staff or technology. Having said that, if we did something like a work session that could be prior to either one of the municipal league meetings or one of the township meetings, we'd already be in a space that could be useful, and perhaps, I mean, if we're going to start doing kind of boutique meetings, then we probably need to do them in everybody's district. There's nothing on this agenda that is special to people who live on the east side of the county either. So I've been joking about that we should all go to Whitney and then we can do some things on aging. But then that ends up being under engagement. So part of it is the question is, what are we really hoping to do? And if we want to do some additional engagement, could it look differently? And yet I do think doing a work session or something could potentially meet some of the things that you've at least brought up, Commissioner Bertram.
Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a little bit different opinion. I guess I would be receptive to being off-site for maybe a couple meetings throughout the year, just to give us a different perspective, let people know we're out and about. One thing that I brought up, and I was going to bring this up by issues on commissioners, and that is the success of the fair. I appreciate the department heads that were out there, the presence of the county being out there at the fair. In particular, the sheriff's department being out there, promoting a positive aspect of law enforcement and public service opposed to a punitive approach, and I think that makes for a good, healthy outlook on government. And so I had suggested a couple of years ago that maybe we try during the fair, we try a meeting out there. I don't know how possible that would be with the technology, but that, to me, that would be one option that I would kind of like to look at. And if people want to come out and see the process at the fair, we make a spectacle of ourselves. So that's one thing that I could see us perhaps trying. So,
Mr. Chair, just
Commissioner Clark?
it's okay off of that one. I was going to bring up under issues by Commissioner. We had the first annual milk run, and it was fabulous, and highly recommend that next year people might want to, like, we get the board to participate. We could do a work session out there. I mean, I actually think there's some opportunities there as well. But if we're trying to get out in community, then we just need to remember that these are obviously our business meetings. So if we're trying to, I mean, I got to talk to well over 100 people just by being there at the milk run, which is more than I would have done in the booth even. So, what are our ways that we really want to be engaging, and when and how is that we're doing it in person versus people being able to stream our meetings at any point in time?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Notch?
Maybe a better idea then is, similar to like Farm Fest, where you just have open forum with the county board there, and
Yeah.
People can come up and ask a question, or instead of trying to live stream a meeting and organizing all that, maybe we just have a half hour or hour where Q&A and introduce ourselves to people that might want to sit and listen.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, and Steve, I would agree with that. We could maybe do something like that, but kill two stones with one bird, in that, do that.
Kill two
informal
birds
session.
with one stone.
Oh, okay.
You had it flipped.
Okay. Well, with the cannabis rules, I think it's kind of changed, okay? But that would give us a chance to be informal at one time and then just move in the formal. And again, we could maybe streamline the agenda so that it's not inconvenient for some of the other folks that have issues that, would demand more time. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
And Mr. Chair, you're
Commissioner
being very
Clark.
patient. It's almost like I'm being a Commissioner Bertram with all my questions or ideas.
Well, I'm waiting, so, but I'll do
Yeah,
it.
I know you, yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
one other thought that was along those lines is I'd actually like to suggest that we have a time that we get all of us to come to a summertime by George or more. We all go out to the fair, which is great, and it's on the edge of one part of the county. We could go to something else too, where we could have people, I mean, I go and the sheriff goes at times. So, I mean, but it would be, if we're talking about getting a flavor of what different people are seeing or thinking or hearing we might be able to do something kind of similar, maybe during like the warm-up or something, and nobody'd have to spend much time.
Okay. Well, I'm the one that obviously brought this up, and I think it's a missed opportunity if we don't. Commissioner Notch brought up an evening meeting at the last meeting, a different time. A lot of this is perceptual. When I was in the House, we did mini sessions, and we went we did about, I don't know, I'd say at least 10 of them over a couple of years. We went to Bemidji, we went to Moorhead, Mankato, Rochester. We moved them. We had actual legislative hearings. We had actual votes on things. And a lot of it is perceptual. The public watches us, and public is seeing how engaged we are. When we did the Justice Center open houses, we saw how well attended they were. And the more important part of that was, even if they weren't there, they were paying attention. They heard about it, and then they talked about it. So even if they wouldn't come to a meeting, they'd see that we, were listening, and we're a part of Stearns County, as I've said many times, is 65 miles end to end, 65 miles side to side, especially in the western part. I've gone to Summertime by George many times, not officially, but as a participant, and certainly in St. Cloud, we're here all the time. So I don't think that would hurt. And technology-wise, there's things out there with cities and private organizations that have the technology capability of doing it. So we certainly, again, it's a belief that I have that would show the public that we are engaged, we're going to move the time, we are going to do business and can do business. And they're more involved. I mean, when I do my columns, again, all of us do things differently. I do a column, Commissioner Notch does. I do a video update. The people, what I'm learning, I'm shocked at, and I'm sharing that with the public. The more the public understands, the more we do things going out to them, they'll pay more attention. The more they understand the county, the more our job will be easier, because we won't have to explain things in detail like we have to when they don't understand or aren't tracking some things. The Sheriff Department always has done a good job. I sent the Sheriff and Chief Deputy Miller the pictures. Marlene and I did the dog and the squad car, the Sheriff. I got to be a Sheriff. I was surprised my head fit in that hole on the board, but it did. And I was on the Sea-Doo, so I shared that with the Sheriff. But the Sheriff always has a strong presence, and always did have. The first year I was on the board, I was shocked that there was only 4 county people at the fair the entire phase, and now that's definitely gotten better. So last year especially, because we were doing the Justice Center stuff. But that engagement and being out there, I didn't do the milk run, I did the milk walk. It was from the cotton candy to the booth, but I did that, the cotton candy walk.
And you absolutely can do the walk during the run, just so you know. They've had a bunch of people walking.
There were a lot of people, and again, that's the outreach, and I think that's important. And we pay the staff anyway, we have the technology out there, so we certainly can come up with a lot of excuses why we can't do it. It's just a matter of, do you want to do it? And Commissioner Notch said put it on the back burner. I'm not a back burner kind of guy, because we're all limited to how long we're going to live and how long we're going to do something. If we're going to do it, let's do it. And if we don't want to do it, then don't do it. But I think it's a missed opportunity if we do not do it. So that's my 10 cents. So Mike doesn't know any more right now than he did before we started the conversation.
Correct.
What would it hurt to try? And my suggestion to Mike was, when we talked, is every year, just do it where the chair wants it to be done. Of course, I'm the chair this year. Next year, Steve will be the chair, and Terrell will be the chair, and Joe will be the chair. And if Joe wants to have it here, then have it here. If he wants to have it at the fair, have it at the fair. Same thing with Terrell. Wherever, if you want it at Summertime at George or wherever, we can do that. It can be a work session, but I don't know why it couldn't be just a regular meeting. And I'm not concerned with people coming here. We don't have a lot of people that come here. I'm not concerned about them being confused that we're not here for one meeting. We certainly would post it. We'd get the information out. So I just know my experience with the mini sessions was extremely receptive, and the public really liked that and learned a lot about state government. It would be the same, I think, with counties. That's my
Yeah, Mr.
opinion.
Yeah.
Commissioner Clark.
And obviously, those were for a broader period of time. There was a whole bunch of different things. That is part of the reason for going to the fair in some ways, is letting some people know, including a whole lot of people who don't live in our area. It's kind of like the Benton County Fair. A whole lot of people don't live in Benton County that go over to the Benton County Fair. But again, I want to circle back to what I said at the beginning. We do significant engagement and outreach, and I think we should be really proud of that. I do have concerns about staff time. I hear you saying we're paying them anyways. A lot of this is at other times. They put significant time. That means they're not getting to some other work, and we should be mindful of that. And that's where I think doing a work session that could be attached to something, it could be a so-called board meeting, but kind of to what end? We're not going to change our agenda unless we're doing some other kind of engagement. It's actually just the agenda, whatever it is that we're going to have. So, I mean, I personally think whether it could be on a back burner, and yet we've got a couple opportunities coming up this fall that could be a good time to get out and do something that at least kind of gives us an opportunity to test it a little bit. So that would be my suggestion.
Mr. Chair, I
Commissioner
guess I
Persky.
would be receptive maybe to give it a one-shot try. If it fails, then we know it's not going to work. If it's actually highly successful, then we know we're on to something. Also, just the venue, I would think we could probably come up with a spot with enough space, the commercial building, the 4-H building. I would hesitate to have it with the poultry, but I would think that, you know.
Are you chicken?
Yeah.
Are you talking about at the fair?
About the turkeys that might be in there.
And Mr. Chair, I think the
Commissioner Clark.
fair thing could be quite a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So the fair is over for this year, just because it was my idea. Cold Spring City Council chambers certainly fully technically available. Centricare in Painesville totally, has probably better systems than we do, or certainly as good. So those are certainly doable if that's something that we want to do. The fair is over with. We can't do it, obviously, at the fair this year. So, Commissioner Knight?
Okay, so if we want to try it, then also would we also change it to a evening meeting then? Or-
Correct. Well, I mean, was my assumption, that would kill two stones with a bird, if we're using that analogy. But then we'd do it evening, and then we would do, again, we can certainly do a business meeting. That would, I think personally, that would be, and then of course, you're gonna get the local media to pick up on it. I mean, Carol Mormon, I bet, would come to a meeting if it was out in Melrose or Sauk Center next year. So again, it's all part of that outreach. And again, all of us do things differently, but I think the more outreach that one can do, the more the public understands what it is that we do. Remember, people, by the most part, do not know or understand what counties do. They understand the legislature, they understand Congress, they understand city councils, school boards, but a lot of people don't know what a county does, which is good news in a lot of ways, because that means we're off the radar, we're doing our job. But on the same token, the more they know, the more engaged, and that's why we did the public sessions with the Justice Center. I mean, we really worked hard at getting that message out, and we did a good job at doing that. And it's the same thing, only on a much smaller scale.
Mr. Chair, same with the
Commissioner
comp
Clark.
plan. I mean, we actually have, if you look at it, every couple of years, at least, we're having some very significant outreach. And we're doing some significant outreach.
Oh, we
Well,
are, and I want to build on that, so I guess to bring it to a head, Commissioner Klotnart. That's a good
Well,
one.
then I guess if I would propose that maybe you and Mike then work out a meeting date that would work and time, and let's try it. I mean, if we don't see any difference than what we have here, then at least we can say we tried.
And the difference, and, I think the difference, I don't know that the difference is going to be immediate or measurable, but again, I think we'll get a feel for it, but Commissioner Persky.
I guess if you'd like to do it yet, Jeff here this year, that we, we stay with the dates that we have here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and basically the time, just the location would change, and then we'd keep it as that.
I mean, that was my intent, that we keep the date, but obviously the time would change.
Okay.
And there would be some limits on which days we could do, because doing it in the morning ends up being different than doing it at night. So I think we'll have to check all of our calendars to make sure when we could do it in the evening.
And Mike has said today and previously that, you're willing to accommodate whatever.
Absolutely, we'll figure it out.
Whatever. And counties, other counties, this isn't like a new idea. Other counties are doing that. So I guess with what Commissioner Notch said, what we've all said, and then what he just said at the end now, does that give you a direction?
I see some consensus there,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Anything more? If not, then the next item would be the Airport Authority. Mike?
Yeah, this discussion has been going on for quite some time. As if you remember, the Airport Authority actually took action to institute a property tax levy last year, and then got feedback from a number of the members of the entity, the 3 counties in the city, and then they rescinded that action. And then after that, the airport representatives from the airport came and visited with all 3 counties, and I believe they finally met with the city. All that took time, and then we wanted the counties to meet, and Benton County and Stearns County representative have met 2 times, which also took a long time to schedule. And now we have a meeting scheduled of representatives from the 3 counties, the city, and the Airport Authority itself towards the end of August. And I forwarded to you after each meeting somewhat of a summary of some of the issues that I think there was some consensus on, at least between the 2 counties. And those are, 1, to impose a property tax levy limit on the authority. The second one was to put elected officials, county commissioners, on the governing board. And then a couple other issues that we continue to get support from the city and from the sales tax as we do today. So, but this board as a group hasn't really talked about that before we go into a meeting with the 4 parties. So I just put this on the agenda so we could have some discussion, and so the board chair and vice chair and myself are comfortable representing the board in this next discussion.
So I think the discussions were good between the airport and the 2 counties that chose to participate, us and Benton. Now the bigger meeting, Sherburne will step in the city. So I think we need to continue the discussion. Their intent right now is to assess the $1 million, is what they've said. So that's probably going to happen no matter what. But it's a slow process. It's hard to get commissioners together with our schedules. But so, Steve?
Yeah, I guess, they were very informative, and I think the airport, the people that we met with, pretty much, I think, heard loud and clear the changes we'd like to see. I myself am fairly comfortable with them kind of agreeing to some of the things that Mike had stated. I guess I don't have, the levy kind of bites, but in reality, we did miss some things when this got started, like the equipment. We could have brought all kinds of questions up, which, part of it's on all the entities that are involved. But I'm comfortable, with if they're willing to institute, some of the things we referenced that we'd like to see. I don't know.
Okay, Commissioner Persky?
Well, I'd like to hear your opinion of what was discussed. I just heard his.
Oh, yeah. And I guess I thought maybe I didn't go in detail enough, but these things that you're seeing, the airport didn't come to us with that. That's what we
Correct.
driven home, is that this is what we missed. I wasn't here when we voted to go in on this, and I would have voted no, as 2 of the commissioners did, Commissioner Notch and Commissioner Mergen, just because of the apprehensions I had on this, which is exactly is playing itself out. Whenever you give taxing authority to an unelected board, and it's only through appointment, that's dangerous. Watershed districts can be that way. You really got to be mindful because, again, our responsibility, as you've heard me say, in my opinion, is very fiduciary. And when we're giving away taxing authority to somebody that's not elected, and our only oversight of that is by appointment or not reappointment, that gets a little dicey. And then just the involvement being kept up to date, which none of us were. And yep, we can go to their meetings, and I plan on doing that, but they can come to our meetings too. It took us doing what we did to get them to come to our meeting, which again, major taxing authority. And it's not going to get better, in my opinion. It's going to get worse. And plus, remember the agreement you guys signed was that they wouldn't tax for 10 years. And we're not 10 years into this. I think we're 6 years into it. So there's a lot of concerns. And starting this, hopefully will build some accountability if we follow this, and some intercommunication between the airport board, and it may slow them down. I'm always nervous. I've read their minutes and a lot of that stuff. I'm not a high-tech guy, so I hate having to go into a website and then into another website. Mike said he's going to help me with that because time, I value my time of how long I want to get the information. But when you read the minutes, they're all unanimous votes. They're all, the discussions on even the $1 million, I think it was a total of maybe 10 sentences of the discussion. So that all concerns me. And when I have yet to talk to anybody, I put this in several of my columns, nobody knew that we were part of an airport commission. And I keep having to remind everybody, Painesville's got an airport, Bruton's got an airport, Sauk Center's got an airport, certainly a different airport than St. Cloud. The one thing that comes out of these meetings is we all support the St. Cloud airport. I mean, none of us are saying, hopefully they close down. Absolutely not. It's a regional airport. It's a regional force. But we're trying to help them maximize revenue. Commissioner Chapinski from Benton County suggested naming rights. They've got hangars there named for companies. They started charging for parking, a reasonable fee. Those things, the more they can act like a business, the better off we're going to be because the less tax they're going to need. So that's the communication that we're trying to build. So that's my take. Commissioner Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a couple questions from Mike. Can you remind us how much flexibility are in the contract for what changes? I mean, they've instituted all the changes they said they were going to change. Well, I mean, the changes they've instituted are ones they said they were going to do. They found out some things were practical, which I think some of us told them probably wasn't going to be practical, but how much flexibility do they have under the contract? And then if I'm recalling correctly, and I didn't go back and look at it before this meeting, it takes 3 of the 4 entities, the 3 counties and the city, to vote on any changes. Is that correct? Because right now we've only had half the group, and my understanding from Sherburne is the reason why they weren't coming is they wanted city council people to be there too. So we just need to remember right now, and the things that are on here are things that I've suggested, so I'm not saying there's a problem, but we may have a little struggle going forward. But is that correct, 3/4? Yeah. And then how much flexibility does the airport authority have on their own?
Commissioner Clark, can you help me understand the question?
Yeah, Commissioner Bertram just brought up that our understanding was they weren't going to start taxing for 10 years, but do they have that ability? And then the city had agreed, but I don't think it was in the contract, that they were going to keep doing the in-kind services. So, as you're looking from the quote-unquote business model part of this, kind of how much flexibility we have. I mean, I'm glad we're working on this, and it does take 3 of us to change anything, I think.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. The bylaws or the agreement between all the parties, it does give the airport authority the ability to levy the tax now, prior to 10 years. I think people that were involved at the time didn't think it would happen this quickly, definitely. But the authority is within there. It's not limited to after the city's appropriation ends. The city supports the airport in a number of ways. Some that were just more administrative, like financial and administrative, payroll and doing their budgets and finances, legal advice, representation. And some of those are the things that went away pretty quickly. And I think the city would argue that they really couldn't be doing that for the airport authority at that time. There's more significant services that are provided by the city, though. So law enforcement, if there's a a flight that's has commercial passengers, law enforcement has to be there. For example, the fire service that is provided at the airport, those are I would characterize as much more expensive and necessary than some of the things that they've stopped doing. They also provide services, at least space, to work on some of their big vehicles that they can't necessarily do at the airport. So those are the kinds of things that I think we need to attempt to get the city to continue to provide even after the 10 years are over. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
So, and Mr. Chair, I think, the list overall, I mean, if they will agree to have actual elected officials on there, that would certainly be my preference, and is something that brought up when this was first done, was that it was kind of hard to have this board have nobody that's elected on there. I know that a backup possibility could be doing liaisons, but having voting members. Since the question is, what do we support? I think I support that. I think actually the imposing the levy limit, a reasonable levy limit, it's probably one of the more important things in here, so that both our boards, but also our taxpayers know that even though looks like a little bit, it can add up. So that's pretty important. The pieces about the city continuing those services is important. And I know on the list it says that that when it comes time to extend the regional sales tax, all will include it as a project. I'd argue it should be a more enhanced amount of money that's going. It was rather surprising how small of an amount of the sales tax was coming to this, but that's something else that could certainly be, advocated at the time.
My understanding, Mike, was that it takes all four entities, or is that only to remove an entity from the?
I think that's the way, yes.
Okay. So for other things, it would be 3 of the 4.
I believe so. I really need to look at it again to make sure.
Because my understanding was it was all 4 entities, which again is really odd, because most joint powers, or it's a majority. But I know for a fact, to get out of it, if a county wanted to get out of it, that would take all 4 entities. Well, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, that's my recollection,
the airport is in Sherburne County. It's a St. Cloud airport, and again, it's a regional forest, but so we have to kind of remind ourselves of that, so Sherburne not wanting to come to the table, well, and they drafted this. I mean, Sherburne County, Bruce pretty much drafted this agreement when he first became administrator, and I can see why someone who created it would be sensitive to it, but we wanted to know what our message was, which this is it, before we met with the city. I mean, you don't go negotiate with the unions until you have an idea of what it is, what our position's going to be. So that's why we did this, and we did do it. And now when we do meet with the big group, as I shared with everybody, I'm not going to go through all these other meetings and all these other discussions because they chose not to be there. We're going to start from this point and move forward. And then, again, the levy limit, as Commissioner Clark says, is huge, and having an elected official on the board from each county is huge. And
Mr. Chair, I think it's important to say the city is a party, right? Just like we're a party, and the other 2 counties are a party. So it's a little different than I think that it's, yes, getting them to continue the services is a request. One could call it a negotiation, but they are one of the members of this contract. So that's my understanding, is why Sherburne absolutely wanted to participate. They just thought the city needed to be there as one of the 4 entities. And that's actually something we talked about here. I mean, I was surprised that we went ahead with just 2, and it sounds like it was fruitful with Benton County, and I'm glad of that. But at this point, I respectfully think it's important for both you and Commissioner Notch, as you're going into this next part, this is about all 4 entities, not just 3 of us.
And I think that was always the plan, was for the 3 counties to come up knowing what our position was, and then meeting with everybody. So we're doing that now. We're going to meet with everybody. So we've got a plan, and we're going to meet with everybody. The tax impact is much greater for Stearns County because the tax is not going to be assessed to the city of St. Cloud because they're contributing the $620,000. I don't know what the tax difference is between what the tax would be and the $620,000, but the tax will be greater. And of course, I feel strongly that this should be on the tax statement because, again, people don't know that we're a part of this. And when they see, and we all know what's going to happen, they're going to see that and they're going to say, well, what's this airport authority? And again, we have to be accountable to that because, again, it's not a slush fund, and it shouldn't be. Commissioner Persky?
Mr. Chair, yeah. And I would hope that at the end of the 10 years, then those would be then assessed to the city, the resident city of St. Cloud. I would think that would happen.
I think
that's the understanding.
Yeah.
Commissioner Persky, yes, they're contributing, I think it's $620,000 a year currently after the 10 years. And if there would be a property tax levy, it would be levied within the city as well.
Right. And Mr. Chair, when we brought this proposal to come together as a regional airport, very much I was concerned about a couple of the issues, but it was my assumption that the financial commitment by the city of St. Cloud for 10 years was going to cover the costs and that there would not be a levy. Also, the ability to withdraw. I thought we would have that ability to do so by choice and not necessarily by a 4-0 vote on that. So it was a little bit concerning that comes out to be the parameters when I didn't necessarily understand that when we moved it forward that's the way it was going to be. So.
And again, I think there's a lot of moving parts to this, and what we do now moving forward, we've only been a part of this for 6 years, is going to be extremely critical, I think, in how we lay the foundation. Part of the accountability part of it obviously has changed. I mean, again, I think they're going to be coming before us at least once a year. We're going to be more aware of what's going on. So that's all positive. But the other thing that I keep bringing up is because when I was on the city council in Painesville, we have an airport. 95% of hangars and a lot of the stuff are covered by federal and state funding. So, I mean, they're getting huge federal and state support for airports, which is great, but to add this on top of that. And I think, again, if I would have been the city of St. Cloud and Sherburne County, I would have been happy as hell that Stearns County jumped in on this because they can take a step back. It's still the St. Cloud Airport. It's not some other name or another. So, and again, it is a regional. I've flown it several times, and I make a habit of asking people, where are you from? And I can tell you the bulk of the people are from here to the cities, which I found interesting. Certainly a lot of local people use it, but a lot of people, rather than driving into Minneapolis, St. Paul, they're driving towards St. Cloud, a lot less, hectic. And again, we want them to grow that. We want them to get another airline beyond Allegiant. We want Allegiant to do more flights. The more we can generate that, the better off we're going to be. So, you got what you need, Mike? Or I think I've heard everything. Steve?
Yeah, I guess my biggest takeaway is, them proposing the levy was probably opened our eyes that, we really should have probably had a little more engagement. And I think, if just like Soil and Water, the library, if they come once a year to a board meeting and give us an update of, where they're at, I think that would be awesome. I think there's also, as we get closer to that 10 years, probably conversations need to be had, like with the city of St. Cloud and Stearns County, whoever's providing some of these services right now at no charge, that we can continue having some of this stuff done without creating a separate fire department, a separate, police department. you know, if everybody says, hey, we'll contribute, you know, something toward it, non-financial, but whether it's people or whatever, you know, that we keep communication lines open, you know, because we are in it now, and I guess, you know, after the vote, you know, it's like we're all hands on deck now. We all need to work together to make it viable and efficient as possible.
And Stearns County has done, we certainly have gone above and beyond. We provide the emergency services for the airport and some other things that we do. And again, my sensitivity always is, it's in Sherburne County. They're just as big as we are. But, you know, everybody likes to deflect some of those responsibilities and say, well, let Stearns take care of that. You know, again, it's a partnership, so let's approach it as such, is my only concern, I guess.
Just a final comment, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess I'd like to just comment the great asset that it is. You know, we've been kind of focusing on the negative aspects. With the APO, in our visits to DC, we've always mentioned about the importance of St. Cloud Airport and looking for federal funding and support for that. Yesterday at Career Solutions, we talked about Delta and the program that they're going to have with training mechanics and using that as an on-site spot, you know, for them. And so that's another positive that's coming about. So there is a, you know, real bright side of what is going on there. You know, regionally, what it provides for the central Minnesota, I think, is a great asset as well. So let's hope those positive things continue.
And I think the National Guard, what was that Hawk program they're trying to position for?
The Blackhawks.
The Blackhawk. And again, hopefully they're successful with that. Again, and that's part of our whole discussion has been with them, is what can we do to help make you, you know, you're operating like a business. What can we do to make you more financially stable, that you don't need to just automatically go to a levy? So those are the discussions. I think we, Steve and I understand the discussion in the mic. So next item, discuss the 2026 preliminary budget and tax levy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I provided in the packet a description of where we are, well, where we were last week within the budget process, the 2026 budget process. And as I said in the cover memo, we're still working on that on your behalf. But I wanted you to see where we were, sort of to reiterate again from the previous meeting, you know, the requests that are out there, the requests from departments that we're trying to work into the budget for like new initiatives, new people, and just tried to outline some of those major items so that if you have comments about any of that, we certainly want to hear that. I can tell you though, if I was giving you the presentation of where we are at this moment, we would be more like a 5.8% increase in the tax levy, which is roughly where we see the property tax base increasing. And the bulk of that is from changes in the human services budget, but also some other things as well. So again, I tried to outline in the memo, and that'll be updated before your next meeting, some of the things that are being considered and could be considered in a case that you wanted to give us some feedback as we go through the process here.
The non-levy revenues, would that be the fees? It's going from 3.16 to 6.17 from the 29th to the 12th in that very first page where you have 2025 adopted budget, the 2026, and you've got July 29 board meeting, August 12th update. You've got the non-levy revenues from 3.16, an increase to 6.17 as of today. Where'd that revenue increase come from?
I think the biggest piece of that was a change in our assumptions for interest income.
Interest and also state and federal dollars.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with the fees yet.
There would be some fees in there that we're going to talk about.
Right.
About $225,000 in increased fees and environmental services would be the ones that are being suggested by the county. Other of these would be, as Randy said, other income.
And of course, the last meeting, that 12% number certainly was well advertised, and we've all heard a lot about that. So making sure that the number is well advertised, that 12% is not 12%. It wasn't really 12% then, but that would be replaced now by the 5 point today. 5 point what?
8.
5.8 today. So, and again, I've reminded people, this is a $210 million plus budget. We've got 1,000 employees, a lot of services that people want. A lot of the health and human services, that 36% of our budget we can't control. 20% of our county residents access those health and human services, so 80% don't get those services, or but we have to provide them. And so all those things kind of play into this, but the goals, certainly, we all individually have different goals, but the staff has been prudent in trying to, carve that as far back, and that's certainly my interest. What I'd like to know as you start going forward, Mike, is what cuts have been made. I'm not asking for you to report on that now, but what have we done to decrease the budget? Because there's a perception that we never do anything to decrease the budget, and I know that's, one leg of the three-legged stool is decreasing budget items and then not granting budget increase requests. Those are two very important, again, and the public doesn't always get to see that, where people are asking for things that they don't get, or that things are changed or eliminated as these budgets go from. And the thing that we talked about yesterday at the audit exit meeting, which I continue to share with people, is that we have no debt. And again, that's huge. I think a lot of people would be shocked to find out how much debt their cities have. And for us not to have any debt is huge. And that, again, to the credit to the staff for making that happen over the years, and county boards that reined it in. If you have a liberal board, I'll guarantee you're gonna have high taxes. I mean, it's common sense. So the boards over the history have been prudent, and the staff have followed that direction and done what they can to minimize the increases.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I recognize that it's hard to say that we can't cut our energy costs, probably much. We can't cut our healthcare costs. We can't cut our salaries that have already been negotiating. So again, for the public, the big thing is to try to keep whatever those increases down, and recognizing I might sound like I'm conflicting with what you just said, Commissioner Bertram, that, Beltrami County hasn't had much ability to keep their levies down because they have so much federal land. We've got some of our most rural counties actually have most fiscally prudent boards, have some of the biggest increases, and it's partially that because we are a creature of the state, and they've basically told us what we can and can't do and who we can get money from and what we have to do. And so that's the only wrinkle I'd add in is you could be trying to keep things down, and sometimes there's not a lot you can do about it. I fully recognize that within the next year, based on what we believe is coming from the feds, or we've seen already and some of the state, it is going to be very hard for us to keep it down that much. I am glad that you're getting it out there, that you've been able to at least get it down. If you can get it down more, we clearly would like that.
And we have not talked about the $1 million cut from the state and the $1 million cut from the federal level right now. So $2 million doesn't sound like a lot in a $210 million plus budget, but it adds up quickly. And again, we don't have a choice. They took the funding, but they didn't take away the mandate of doing the program. Say they would take the funding and say, okay, we're not going to fund you having the lights on during county board meeting. Okay, that's fine, but you have to have the lights on. If they give us the option of turning the lights off, okay, well then now that's our decision. Do we leave the lights on or do we turn the lights off? But they're not doing that. They're cutting the funding and they're mandating the program, which again, I just think is so unfair. Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, just to clarify then, Randy and Mike, so we're looking at a less than 6% increase on the levy?
At this point, yes, Commissioner.
5.8 sounds better, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And then also, are we looking at some of those increases from the federal programs, Medicare, Medicaid, that might affect us in 2027 that then would reflect perhaps an increase that we're not catching this year?
Commissioner Perscott's a really good point, and I was discussing that with our Human Services Administrator yesterday, that we really haven't provided anything in here to begin to meet some of those needs, and so we're beginning that discussion, and probably that would not be a reduction in what we're talking about here. So hopefully I'll have a little more information, and we'll have some thoughts for you about that at your next meeting, I hope, or at least some of it just depends on when we get some clarity from the federal government. So it might not be next meeting, it might be a couple meetings from there, kind of how we think we should prepare.
Okay.
But it's great. I mean, it's a concern. Definitely.
Commissioner Clark?
Mr. Chair, just for the public listening, and part of the reason why right now, my understanding is that you're able to even get this far along as it relates to human services because our fund balance. We have a decent human services fund balance that will provide some cushion to help us weather through this until Commissioner Persky, back to what you were just asking, until we really know what we're going to have to do to sustain. I mean, that's obviously not sustainable because it is a fund. It's not ongoing money, but at least for right now, that's going to help our property taxpayers. And I think from a media standpoint, it's important for them to know that because we said some of what they're going to do. It's really cause us to raise taxes because we're not going to have a choice at the moment. We have a little wiggle room. I believe that's correct.
And not to dive too deep into it, but just some of the big picture, well, I shouldn't say big picture, it's a micro picture, like the fraud investigator, some of those things. I see in here you have it at 0.5 with the grant, but again, we have one fraud investigator. Do we look at adding the second one for what we've accomplished? Those discussions, are we going to be able to have some of those discussions like that program, for example? Or when I say we, I mean the board.
Yeah, we certainly can. That particular subject, Mr. Chair, is we know we have that additional revenue. It's not enough to support a full-time person. So for right now, we plugged in the dollar amount and it'll support a half a person. We need to have some further discussions on really what we do with that. But and there's other things in here that are really in flux too. We're, as you can see, I'm trying to allow a little more investment in public safety and find a way to employ a couple more deputies, for example, that have been requested. We talked about maybe using public safety aid. Well, that might not be how we think we should do that in the end. But again, I really wanted you to reiterate what the requests were, kind of where we are today. You can see, Commissioner Bertram, that, as you said, what are some of the changes you can see in there? For example, there was, I think the number is 11 and a half additional personnel requested. You can see now we've got that. We're trying to fund 5.5. So, and will we end up at that point? I'm not really sure, but that is just an example of showing you what we're trying to reduce to.
And I think in our surveys and everything, what does the public want? Well, certainly they want police protection, and that's important. They want roads. When I was on the city council, I kept having to remind the other members, what are we here for? We're here for fire protection, police protection, curb, gutter, water, sewer. And then of course people always want to get off into the weeds about all these other programs and all these other services. Well, we can't be everything to everybody. I mean, we've got to really hone in on, and public safety in our surveys, that's a big deal. Response time, and the sheriff's done a good job of meeting those needs in the response time in a very big county. And that, again, that's what people expect and deserve, versus maybe another program or something. So we have to, it's all about choices, as we all know that. And sometimes the public doesn't always understand that it's about choices, because if they like parks, they want parks. Well, what about police protection? Well, I don't care, I never needed it. Well, okay, that's not the way it works. I mean, because some people are gonna need it. And of course, if they're not there, you're more apt to need it, because it's protection's not there. So it's a balancing act, obviously. And of course, part of the tax discussion or the budget discussion goes on into the tax discussion, but taxes are going to go up because of valuations, external from these discussions. So it's definitely like a doughboy effect. You poke it in one area and it's going to pop out in another area. So, okay, any other points on that? Keep doing, you're going the right direction, Mike, for me, so for whatever that's worth, keep going that direction. Issues by commissioners. Who wants to start? Terrell? I'll start my right.
You always have me go first.
Oh, then I'll have Steve. Steve?
want time to think.
Let's mix it up. Joe, you go first.
Again, I just want to say kudos to everybody that was out at the fair. It was nicely done, so thank you, staff and folks that were out there. Then also just want to mention the election today. We hopefully will be able to fill that chair on the other side of Terrell over there with the upcoming election. So if you're in District 4, get out and vote.
We could put another chair and just have both primary winners, have two of them there until November 4th.
I don't know if you want to give them each half a vote. I don't know.
Yeah. Commissioner Notch.
Yeah, thanks. One question I had, I don't know if it's really concerning or not. Do we ever consider doing sign-in sheets, like when people show up to our meetings? I know a lot of the other meetings or committees that you go to, they have people sign in. I think part of it is just because then they can put it on the record, like when you go to watershed meetings, have you sign in. I think part of it, so the secretary knows, who to put on there, but I'm not sure if it's a big deal or not.
Are you talking about us or the public?
The public, like if they want.
Teasing. I guess I thought we did.
We do for public hearings.
Okay. All right. No, it's just a curiosity
Well, I
thing.
think that would be a good point, I think.
And sometimes it can be disruptive too. You'd almost have to do it maybe outside the door because if people come in, I don't know. That was just a thought I had. The other thing is, thanks to everybody for the sympathies for my father-in-law who passed away last week. It was quite a tribute. So I did miss the fair because of that. So
Raleigh was a good guy. I was fortunate enough to know him most of my life, and having to stand in line, Marlene and I have to stand in line for an hour and a half, certainly showed the respect that
yeah, for an 89-year-old fella.
That he had. Yep. So, our sympathies.
Thanks.
Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, hard week for your family and a lot to celebrate too. So continue to think about all of you as you're dealing with that. I brought up the milk run a little bit earlier. It was the first annual milk run. We made the pitch to try to get another dairy producer or two on our dairy advisory board, and I really just want to give kudos to those folks. They did an incredible job. People were even able to get their times. They were timing everybody, Joe. People were walking. The youngest person on their own was 4. The oldest was 77. There was somebody in a wheelchair. There was somebody with a support animal. There was some strollers. It was honestly pretty heartening. And I got to tell you, there was a 7-year-old who looked so loose running the whole thing. I can't wait to see how he does in the future. Almost all were from Stearns County, but not quite all. So that was really a cool thing. And hopefully we're going to be able to do it. The only thing that was kind of too bad was, even though they gave plenty of notice, the fair folks never got it in their materials or on the schedule. But they had well over 100 people, over 120 signed up, which is great for a first thing. And then, Joe, you talked about the primaries. So if you are listening, because Jeff and I were talking about this beforehand, some people don't know where even that is. If you live in St. Cloud, Ward 4, Ward 1, Precincts 3 or 4, or Waite Park, you can go vote, and please do. Your voice is important. It might be summer, but getting to go out and do that's really important. And I'll keep it to that since we got a long work session.
Well, unlike that young man, that's one word I was never called was loose. So
I was impressed. It was impressed. Wow.
It was a very good turnout. A lot of people ask where can they vote, from Freeport and Melrose, and it's not your district, so there's certainly going to be confusion on that. But hopefully people do turn out. Just to be clear, the discussion that we've been having on remote work, as I said at the end of that meeting, isn't over. So I don't know how we're going to bring that to a head. But I think, at least, I don't think I'm the only member that wants to finalize that discussion. I don't know that we need much more information, but I think we need to give some signal on what it is, just like you did on the remote meeting and the airport, is get a direction of where we should go. So I don't know how you want to do that, Mike, but that's something to think about. But we've got, I think, as far as I'm concerned, we got what we need, but now we just need to give a kind of a direction from the board, from the whole board, of what direction we think we should go in. License tabs for folks that are paying attention. The state has not been sending out notices. I assume you know that, Randy. They're delayed. I got mine yesterday, and it's due in August. There's a lot of people that have already gone. The state's not sending out the notices, and most people, including me, if I wouldn't have had a friend that told me about that, I wait for the notice, then I do it. Well, if you don't get the notice and you don't renew your tab, and I asked an officer, I said, well, are you still going to give a ticket? He said, probably, because your tabs aren't current. So people won't. So if you don't get a notice, look in your license plate. If it says August, you've got until September 10th to renew those tabs.
Mr. Chair?
With or without a notice. Commissioner Persky.
Yeah, Sheriff, you're in the audience. Have you been given any notification as far as backing off on citations? No? Okay.
He answered that fast.
Then don't look at my plates.
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't hesitate on that one at all.
Okay.
I think that's, I think I had one more thing and I forgot I didn't write it down. So
Sorry.
we'll wait. No, we'll wait for next time. So if that's it, we'll adjourn this meeting and then we'll convene the work session in 5-10 minutes.